welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation, along with
CJ Liu from the Fire It Up with CJ show.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
If you've ever wanted more peace, serenity, and happiness in your life, then do we have the radical power of acceptance show for you. Today we'll talk about making peace with what is, how to do it, why you want to do it, and why doing so can truly set you free. That, plus we'll talk about breathing workshops, writing up a storm, women's circles, healing work, a new start to awe, Michael's busiest week ever, simultaneous Facebook and YouTube lives, and what in the world 2 inches of water and a bike ride has to do with anything.
Uh-oh.
So welcome back to the show, CJ. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready to shine.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Okay, 2 inches of water. What happened?
I think it was yesterday. This whole week is a beautiful blur. And we live in this most beautiful home here. And I had just, I'm trying to carve out whatever time I can to throw myself outside in between events this week. And I had just, it was prior to an interview, had completed 9/10 of the book for the interview and said, that's it. I'm getting out for a bike ride now. I'm going to make this work no matter what. And so I throw on my clothes, I run downstairs, I run down to the basement to get out my bicycle, and the basement door is locked, of course. I call this my warm-up. It happens religiously. The door is locked, so I do my warm-up, which is to run back up the stairs in the house to get the keys. That's why I call it the warm-up.
I love it.
And then I go downstairs, and I open the door, and I don't know if a little water came out or not, but the basement was in 2 inches of water because the water heater had just given up.
Oh, no. So how long had it been broken?
Not very long, thankfully, but our stuff was, doing the backstroke, including some stereo equipment and stuff.
Oh,
And so my bike ride became pull the bike out.
Yeah, you got your workout.
Get your feet wet and start getting to work. And it was
Right.
really an acceptance of what is. I could
Right.
certainly have been saying, I've been wanting this bike ride. I've been wanting to get out. And I could have made a list of the poor me's, woe is me's. But instead, let's get to work on this. And you're right. I actually said to myself, well, it's movement you wanted, and you got it. And you make the best of it.
And you
it
probably
turns
were
out
using-
fine.
Yeah, they were probably using muscles that you don't normally use.
There you go. And which is helping for the move next month.
Yes,
So
exactly.
training. And Jessica said, this is a good step because now we get to better organize what things survived the water, and it makes us lighter from
Right.
the move. So
Yeah.
it's radically accepting what is, rather than trying to resist and push against it and go, oh, me, poor me, get my cortisol levels up, burn some telomeres because of some water. Instead, it is as it is, beautiful, and it's helping us with boxing and stuff. So I don't know if I'll give it a full woo-hoo, but hurrah!
Like, okay, maybe, okay. I accept it as is.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so that's been adding to your already busy schedule of like putting bajillion shows out, your coaching, and then what else is going on?
So
Not that isn't enough.
every once in a while we have our coaching sale, which probably by the time this airs, we're full for the season, although people can check. So I've had a lot of free one-on-ones that I do, a lot of free strategy sessions. And so it seems like every spot, which would normally be a breather for me, I get to meet a new person, which has been really cool. However, I have a focus system for myself to keep myself from melting down. And by melting down, I don't mean emotionally melting down, but kind of melting in front of Skype, which is 4 focus sessions a day of approximately an hour each. I'm comfortable with. That's life is good, 4 sessions a day. And 5 sessions a day, my brain starts to hurt a little bit. Right. 6 is what I typically consider max. I'm on overload if I go anything past that.
So that's 6 coaching sessions in a day?
Either 6 coaching sessions or 5 coaching sessions and an interview.
Okay, got it. So those are all about the same. They're equivalent for you?
about equivalent energy expenditure. And it's not so much both of them give me energy back, but I have to stare at this tiny little dot more or less on the screen. And that level of focus and concentration at this point in my practice seems to be about the most that I'm comfortable with. And I've been doing everything I can to, when I get outside, as quickly as I can, look at things far away, look at birds, look at the horizon,
Mm,
go to the water, get myself away from looking at the pixels just a few inches in front of me,
right,
which gets me kind of nauseous and not so good feeling after a whole bunch of them.
right. Got it.
And so while I'm not not a big fan at all of say of being proud of how busy I am, because if somebody says they're really busy, I want to say let's see what we can do to lighten the load. We don't have to wear that as a badge of pride. But there have been some sevens this week.
But that, you know what, and going back to the theme that it's part of just accepting, because sometimes there's
Bingo.
just a week of sevens, like 7 days in a straight of sevens, and that's just like it is what it is. And then there'll be times when there are like 5 days of, threes, and it's just,
Yeah,
I don't
you
know.
accept it and you accept it if you can actually get to a place of gratitude. So I can see this for what it is. New
Mm-hmm.
clients coming on board, people I can help, great opportunities. Woohoo! If I can do that, then it makes it a lot easier to wrap my mind around. And then if something goes, one thing goes off timing a little bit, which hits the next, which hits the next, which hits the next, whatever happens, that's okay too. And that's really the theme that we're talking about here is be okay with whatever what is, however it shows up. And if you can, then even look for that thread, or in this case, that hugeness of positivity. I would have nothing to complain about. I'm so honored to be able to do this. Of course, when you get to 8:30 at night and you're still doing your upload
Right.
and you're going, but that's okay too. That's
Yeah.
perfectly
Well, I
okay.
think the thing that you've done is one, be in a place of acceptance, but then also being very conscious and mindful about balancing everything so that you don't get to, like you're saying, so you're not myopically focusing on a little red dot on the camera. You're kind of like literally focusing your eyes out in the horizon or through your periphery, and it's like kind of balancing everything out. I think that's probably the best, because sometimes even if you accept what is, which is that you're busy, it's you can accept that you're busy, but then also try to like have some relief valves, even if it's like a 5 minute relief valve or an unexpected packing, packing and
It's
unpacking
interesting
thing.
that you say relief valve because in essence the water heater gave up and relieved all over the
Yeah,
floor.
exactly.
Look at the
Well,
spiritual significance of
exactly.
this.
Well, I wasn't going to mention it, but I did think kind of symbolically, I'm like, interesting. So his water heater broke, it's like the tank broke because it was too, I don't know, worn out.
It's not really too, yes, too worn out. And so I am looking, and actually it's been, I will say, I don't know how to put it that doesn't sound ego. It's not, but I'm really impressed with myself this week that I'm hitting the end because this is a double interview Friday, as they always are. I have one more coaching session after this, and then I've quote made it through the week. And I shut down. I take like the equivalent of a Sabbath, and I do everything I can not to work on Saturdays from Friday evening sundown to Saturday evening at sundown. I'll get a little stuff in there if something's called to me. And tomorrow, and I'll tell you more about it, I will be writing quite a bit, but that's not really work. That's kind of the fun side of things.
Right.
But I have made it through this week by doing that, by continuously looking ahead at my time and strategizing. Throw myself out each chance I can. Relax into whatever is, no matter what, and then look at my chi levels. So I work out typically 2 to 3 hours a day. That's what allows me to do everything on the show. But for this week only, I backed off on all of it
Mm-hmm.
and said, let's take it extra light. Now, the cold I had last week helped with this, but
Right.
helped me at the perfect timing. Let's take things extra light and come through too fresh rather than too worn out. get out, be gentle. And one of the things I've been doing the most is instead of my runs, instead of all my rides and skates, I've been walking like crazy, which is
Mm,
less
right.
energy output.
Hmm.
I'm still outside, like you're saying, getting that periphery, getting that experience,
Yeah, and
getting
moving
the
your
blood
energy
flow.
around.
Bingo, but without burning as many matches. And it has worked tremendously. My guess is, and I could be wrong, but at least for the foreseeable future, I won't have a week as quote busy as this is, at least with our current um, paradigm that we're in. Maybe it's for something that's not as much coaching oriented later on, or for a speaking series or something. You never know.
Right.
But for this current paradigm, I will say we're going to lessen the load a little bit. So we are not hitting all sevens, but I'm impressed at how I made it through, which was stepping back before the week and then each morning setting my SMP of what can we do to make it easier today and easier today and easier today. You still get to do the work. How do I make it easier?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I had a similar kind of experience where I really felt like I needed to finish writing a story that I had been writing, and it's like it can take forever. Like when you're writing a piece, it's like you're trying to polish it, and at a certain point, it's like okay, it's not perfect, just get it out. And I was doing that, and I looked at my calendar. I'm like, it's just not going to happen. Like I had a computer glitch where my computer was updating the software, and it just couldn't go anymore. And I thought my computer was broken, but it was because it was mid-cycle and didn't give me a warning that it was doing an upgrade or anyhow. So that ruined my one writing time that I had. And then I looked at the rest of the calendar, and I was like, I can't really do it. And then I thought, well, so this is accepting and in a different form. I thought, well, you know what? You don't really, maybe you need to call this person that I had a meeting on Tuesday and I said, I just can't, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cancel this meeting. And I'm sorry, I just can't meet. And I rescheduled it and it was no big deal for her, but it gave me like a 3 hour run to go ahead and like do and edit this thing. And then I had like a couple of different things that I just rearranged on my calendar. So instead of feeling guilty, bad, shamed, whatever, like oh I'm letting this, you know, and it was not a big deal with for her at all to move over my calendar. And I canceled a meeting with someone. I'm like, I'm sorry, I just can't do it. I need to actually, but accepting that yeah, sometimes you're gonna have to do that. That's just the way it is. And so I think it's you do what you need to do, and sometimes it's clearing stuff off the calendar, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
and accepting that, like, yeah, if you want this done, the only way you can do that is clear these things off the calendar, and it may upset someone, but you need to do what you need to do. I mean, you have to figure out what your priorities are. And if you put it in a way, it's like, I said, I'm sorry, I have to schedule it because I need to have some time. And to see if I don't do it, I'm not going to be able to do it. Or a friend of mine who wanted to coach, and I said, I'll coach you, but you're going to get the low end model, which means that I'm going to walk and I'm going to talk to you and coach you at the same time. Because if I don't do that, tomorrow I'm not going to get a workout. So if you're an accepting of those terms, I will coach you tomorrow. This is a friend of mine, and I was like, because I'm charging him any money. I'm like, that's how I can make it work, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's not my premier package, but it's what I can do with the time that I have, and I get my stuff done without harming myself. I would normally sacrifice myself, which I'm no longer doing.
Well, you are saying no to, I don't even know if it's really no to others. You're using the word no so that you can say yes to yourself,
Yeah.
which is a powerful acceptance, saying, I can't do everything for everyone, but I've got to take care of myself.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I've had on the I've had yay, I've had on Skype, or I've had several times when we've been talking about finding my voice, and it's actually been happening over the course of a month. And sometimes finding your voice is saying, no, I can't. I'm sorry. I can't do it. I'm
Absolutely.
sorry. And it's hard to do because someone will be disappointed. And yes, someone will be disappointed. Done. Like, what can you do? Someone may be disappointed, or they may not be, or they may be. In some ways, it doesn't really matter if you're doing something that is important to you. It's it's like I had a situation where a dear friend of mine who doesn't listen to the show, so I'm sure I can tell this story, but she's had several instances of like we've been getting together. Like one time I'd fly over to visit with her, and like she would never carve out time for me. You know, it's always like shared time with her family or whatever. And the last time, couple times, it's been like that. And one time when it was planned out, my husband called her up for my 50th birthday and said, "Hey, why don't you meet together?" And she planned time and she said, it's really nice spending a lot of time with you. I'd like to do that. And I was like, okay, let's try to make that happen. And then I haven't been able to make it happen because oftentimes when we're in the Bay Area when I get to see her, it's like I only have these like 2 hour time slots, or she's like between my calendar and her calendar, we can meet for like 20 minutes, for coffee, that kind of thing. So I had an opportunity to actually fly in a day early and spend time with her, which I was then again extending an effort to actually, connect with her. And she's like, oh, well, it was kind of like this kind of unclear, committed, non-committal. It's kind of inconvenient for me were the signals. And I was like, okay, so I just wrote back. The old me would have said, well, my feelings were hurt from that whole experience because it's like we talked about this, and then there was no when you're like, so we talked about me coming over early. This is what I'm trying to do, and there's no answer on the background. It's just this silence so you're like,
awkward.
Yeah. So I was like, so finally I was like, and then I felt bad afterwards. I talked to my husband. I felt bad, and then the old me would have been like, okay, well, just don't say anything or let it pass. And I was like, no. And I just wrote back and I said, you hurt my feelings when you did that. We did have a conversation. I'm getting a sense that this isn't a priority. Our friendship is not a priority. And I understand because, there's lots of things going on in your life and, stuff changes in friendships. But I need to, this is my sense. And so I'm not coming. I'm going to fly in a day earlier, but I'll just try to do something quick with you, like a dinner, since that seems like what you can commit to. And that's cool. But I just want to tell you my perspective on this, which is I feel like I'm leaning forward and you're leaning back, and it hurt my feelings. And I'm out. Basically, it's like I'm out. I'm no longer going to be like leaning forward after repeatedly leaning forward 2 or 3 times to take a nostalgic friendship and resuscitate it. It's like, I'm out. But it's hard to send that email.
Yeah, it is. And you never know. Something good may come of it. And certainly we never know where she's at in life.
There could be a ton of good reasons. I'm not trying to point fingers or anything. It's the point that it is about standing up for yourself and your needs and speaking your truth. It's hard to do.
It is. And doubling back, I like to say that insanity is trying to meet 2 taskmasters. Yeah. When you're trying to please yourself and trying to please somebody else at the same time, that can rip you apart.
Yeah.
And you have to choose yourself, there are times where you'll choose other people, particularly as a parental role, and that can feel great too. But you have to have a clear demarcation. Because if you say, well, I'm just going to make both of us suffer,
right,
and you're ambiguous and in the middle, it really tears you apart.
Yeah, well, I got off of that phone call and I was suffering. And I was like, why am I even suffering? I'm suffering because I've put myself out there and I'm waiting for the other person to respond, to validate. And I was like, okay, screw it. You're not validating. And I'm sick of me putting myself out there for some feeling thrown in the wind kind of scenario. Like, it's not what I want anymore in our friendship. And even though we've been friends for, 40 years, or probably I'm done. And that may be the case. And I feel nostalgic, but it's not working for me anymore. It's so hard. But at the same time, you can't serve 2 masters. Mm-hmm. And if it bothers you to the extent that you're thinking about it and feeling sad, that also is harming yourself for the benefit of some kind of versus acceptance, right? Things have changed.
And be okay with what is.
Yeah, including I may not even, when the time comes next week when I'm going to see her, she may be like, I don't want to get together. I'll be like, okay, we're done. Like I told you my set of expectations or feelings of hurtness, and I guess we're done, you know? And it's sad, but sometimes things change and they won't turn back, right? There are some things that got wet with the water from the water tank. You're going to have to say goodbye to them, right?
Yes. Some of Jessica's beautiful clothing.
It wasn't.
So, but I guess we're lighter to move, and then they are replaceable.
They are replaceable.
And yes, the stereo, she's very optimistic about this. She's much more optimistic than I am. That there's this beautiful surround sound system that we were going to set up in our new place that became a little bit of a submarine.
Oh no. You know what? You'll find that it's so funny because all of that tech stuff, you're going to be able to buy it on Amazon for $12 for something that's like this versus 10 feet tall, you know?
You're probably right. So I want to go back to writing for a second
Yes.
because we're in an interesting parallel place, and letting go of writing and what all of this means. So, and that's what got me on this theme of letting go of attachment, or radically letting go of attachment, which is I've talked about for years. I've been writing an automatic writing book. We got one editor. We went through it. Didn't feel right. Got a second editor. Went through it. Something still was feeling off. Got the edits back from the editor. Took some time.
This is after the second one, right?
After the second one, had to carve out some time to be able to copy over the edits into a document. They were handwritten, so it was going to take time to do that.
Oh man.
And this past weekend, I'm like, that's it. We're diving in. Something doesn't feel right, but I'm going to figure out once I get into it. And so I went into it Friday and I go, I'm fairly confident about this. All right, I'll give it till Saturday and we'll play on Saturday and see. Went back into it on Saturday, got to about maybe 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, pushed my chair back and said, rewrite.
Oh my gosh, you're going to rewrite the whole book?
But this is radical acceptance. We have an outline from our automatic writing program. I've been speaking about it through all of my videos time after time again. I teach a weekly class on it for everybody with the automatic writing program. So I have honed the material. It's clear, it's more concise, it's easier, it's more of a universal message. So it's a much tighter package the second time around. Now, I could make the square peg fit in a round hole, but I'm just accepting that what is. I'll use some of it in the Open-Hearted Warrior book, perhaps, at the end of this year when I write that one. Maybe so, maybe not. But I get to do a rewrite that's going to go much faster. I'm guessing I'll be done in a month, if not less than that. And it'll be clean and quick. And for our purposes of helping people, not to be New York Times #1 bestseller, but for helping people, will be much better. But that was a radical acceptance with all the hours and the thousands of dollars put in edits to step back and say, it's okay.
Yes.
It's okay. And we're going to redo it. And so I started this weekend. And then for my, quote, busiest week ever, I just said, I'm not breaking the chain, which means each morning I wrote. On the mornings that I didn't have time to write, there was one morning 2 days ago where I wrote a page. There was yesterday morning where I got one or maybe two paragraphs done. But I felt great that I didn't break the chain.
Yeah.
Today I was back. I helped finish the whole first, it's broken into 6 parts of the book. Part 1 got done today. And I'm confident I'll knock out another part or 2 over this weekend alone. And so even in the midst of the busyness, I don't want to break that chain. There's something so symbolic of just getting the tiniest little baby touch in the book, and it makes me feel great. Okay, I don't have time to write today. Let me get a sentence or 2 down. I'll feel good.
Right.
I know I touched it. And it's feeling awesome. And I'm going excited. That's why I say the weekends I don't work, or Saturday I don't work. I'll be writing tomorrow morning, but that's going to be more of a labor of love, of a true joy of getting into it. I feel unburdened by what was because I needed to detach. I needed to let go. and that was gnawing at me. And
Yeah.
letting go, just like you're letting go,
Right.
is actually quite liberating.
Yeah, and it's hard, right? Like it's a very parallel story in that you put blood, sweat, and tears into that first version, right?
Absolutely.
And not analogous. Like I didn't put analogous. I didn't put blood, sweat, and tears. But this is a friend that in college was one of my best friends, and we remained best friends when I graduated after college for probably another 10 years. And then I moved out to Seattle, and both of us had families, and we just drifted apart. And there are going to be some friendships that are like that, right? Like it's it's an akin to your book. Like you wrote the book at the time it was appropriate, it felt
Bingo.
right, and then like time had passed, you had more experiences, and now you look at the book and it's like it doesn't fit right now. And so you look at it and you can go, well, I can try to make it fit. I can try to just accept it doesn't fit and move on, or I can it's like all these different choices. And so I'm kind of at that same juncture, right? I have a dear friend, I have a lot of nostalgia and investment and love, real and fondness of all the different times that we had together, just like you probably have of the book that you wrote, right? But then there are times when it's like,
Oh, I'm very proud of some of
yeah,
what's in there. And I read it and I'm like, oh, such good stuff. But you're right, it's out of accord, it's out of harmony, it's
yeah,
vibrating it slightly off.
yeah, yeah, in the case of my friendship, I feel like I have to put a lot of effort and energy to make it work. It's like I'm
Yeah, the book.
constantly taking like the twigs and like, and how was your kids? It's just like constantly feeding twigs, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like exhausted after throwing all these twigs to keep on stoking the fire. And if it gets at that level, then it's kind of not kind to yourself, and it's probably not working for the other person either. Like they're probably doing it for some other reasons too, right? That it's not working for them. They feel it probably, you feel it, and no one will be like, yeah, let's call it in. And it's so hard. But the same thing with the book, right? I just have to go through, and when I've been writing for this Hawaii experience that I told you about,
Yeah.
it was like 4,000 words, and I literally hacked it back down to like 1,900 words, and I
Wow.
have to get it down to 1,200 words, and you know what? The joy of doing that experience is that you get to the quintessential pieces that are needed for it to work. And
Mhm.
it feels like part of what you've been doing with your book is doing that, right? Like you've been like, you are getting down to the quintessential essences. Like, why not just give like 10 gems versus like a treasure chest of stuff that people can't even
Kamal
go through?
Ravikant, he wrote a beautiful book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It.
Hmm.
And it's still at the very, very top for Amazon Kindles. I think it's under 100 pages. And he
Hmm.
practiced his craft before he wrote this book, but he didn't want to give any excess, just what you need to get the concepts and take action on it. There's something brilliant to that. I mean, this is a YouTube world where people want it, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, give me a minute max. I'm still working on it. My
Right.
my daily wows are 3:30 to 4 minutes. I'm getting there.
Right.
But people don't want to read massive books. And we have a lot of beautiful authors that have huge books with the kitchen sink.
Hmm.
But my opinion now is maybe we break that up into a series that's easier. If you've got a kitchen sink, break it up into a lot more bite-sized packages. That way people aren't so daunted by it, can dive in, get the essence, and dive out.
Yeah.
And so we're going to keep it much, much tighter so that people can get in, learn it, go, rather than hearing all of this beautiful stuff that's beautiful stuff. Is it necessary? Radical acceptance says no. That's icing on a cake, but you're out in the middle of nowhere, you're starving. You don't even need the cake. Just give me a sandwich or something,
Right.
man.
Yeah. Well, I love it because I think I was intuitively drawn to like, what are we talking about anyways? But it's about this is about ultimately about peace and serenity and happiness, right? And it's by doing that through acceptance that things have changed in some cases, like the stuff in your basement has changed. My relationship with my dear friend has changed, right? And we're making peace with it, right? Like Jessica will have to make peace with her beautiful clothes that are in your Syria that are now
Which
sitting
means
outside of
she
the
will get
sun.
some more beautiful
Yeah,
clothes that
right.
will be even more her for the
Right.
next phase of our lives.
Well, I think what's interesting is what we're getting to is the how to do it, right? Because what's implicit in the things that you said is a how, right? Like how you do it, how you make peace with things is you say, all right, there's some greater plan that the divine has for me that I don't understand right now. The divine was trying to lighten my load. Like there's some other plan that I don't get, but it's happening nonetheless. Why is my friend Holly, like, why is this happening? Maybe this is a way for me to truly own my voice and realize that I can put myself number one on my needs, which I usually don't do. It's very hard for me to do. So maybe that's why this is coming up now. Like, so how to do it, I think is kind of putting it like looking at the meta picture, like, which is what you did, right? You're like, will help us move,
And
right?
there's a term that comes to mind here, which is making space. So things get ruined, and I'll put ruined in quotes, stuff in the basement that you're going to have to throw out and stuff. That makes space. It makes it easier to travel, less efforting to travel because we're lighter. So in that sense, it makes a space and literally makes space. It's going to take less room. Cutting out a book, which was a square peg in a round hole, is making space for something that's a much tighter, neater package to fit into. The fact that your friendship is not working at this time, while it can sound cold and don't mean it that way, is making space, less bandwidth for something new, for something special, or for more of you to come about.
Right. Yeah. So the how to do it, I think, is so how what is it that we're doing? We're basically reframing and looking at the big picture. That's one way that you gain acceptance, and you see the opposite. It's almost like you've kind of so the opposite of loss would be abundance, right?
What we've
Or
gained, yeah.
yeah, I mean, so it's part of it is like bringing in the the balanced perspective, because if we're doing one thing, probably the other thing is there too. It may be beyond our ability to see it, but it seems like I'm losing a friend. Well, I may be gaining a friendship with myself, right? There's always some what's the word? It's like in the world of duality, the I've lost the chapter. Well, you've gained clarity. Like there's always this dualist, this kind of change of perspective, which I think is happening. It's a higher perspective, and then looking at literally the loss and seeing the gain from it. That's what I'm hearing, or
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
And an acceptance, if not, and I think you already mentioned this, so I'm being a little duplicitous, um, which is even if you don't see it in the moment, if you can say, higher plan, something's going on, water heater was meant to go, we'll find out why later. For instance, the interview went great yesterday. I never got to that last tenth of the book.
mm-hmm.
Why? Well, because there was a water heater broken in the basement. And it was perfect.
Right.
Could it have been gone better than perfect if I had read more of the book? No, that's an overcooked ham. There's no
Right.
need to do that. It's great.
Yeah, it's there's a greater plan. You
And
don't
I'll go with a
understand
vegan
it.
ham here for everybody who's
Yeah,
going, but you don't eat ham, man.
yeah. So and sometimes you don't like the thing. Sometimes life works in mysterious ways, and so even though it feels like it was wrong, bad, sad, destroyed,
All labels.
yeah, maybe it really was none of those things, or the opposite of those things, or all of those things, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be bad, loss, destroyed, right? So that's how you do it. Why do you want to do it? So why does accepting, when you accept, when I accept, you accept, what is it that we gain? Why do you do it? What are the benefits of doing it?
Two big things that come to mind. First off is peace,
Mm-hmm.
which is where we have fear, anxiety, and pain in our lives is pushing against what is. If you're stuck in traffic and you're going to be late for that meeting and you're tearing yourself apart, it's in a sense a self-induced pain because you're not accepting what is. If you go, I'm totally stuck in traffic. Do I have a CD I can listen to? Is there a podcast I want to listen to? Do I just want to kick back and be? Because evidently my calendar's just been cleared for the next
Right.
hour or two.
Right.
It's a radically different way of looking at things, and
Right.
peace is there in the moment.
Yeah.
You know, if you, my first near death experience, I was praying for safety and guidance, and then a minute later, I'm basically near death. And you can say, oh my God, it's so awful. You were training for this big cross country skate. You're never going to be able to do it. You're never going to be able to this, that, and the other thing. Or I can go, well, I prayed for safety and guidance, and here I am broken on the trail where I could have been, a hood ornament on a car.
Right.
Woo!
Right.
How perfect is this?
Right.
If I let go of that attachment, oh, I need to be someplace. I need to do this. I shoulda, I woulda. Any of this stuff can be dropped and just be with whatever the experience is. And all of that stuff goes away
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in this moment.
Yeah. So it's a sense of peace. And I think I once heard, my, dear friend, she has a MP3, and she had said that, faith is actually going through, like, you're developing a faith in these kinds of instances it's like a knife that gets sharpened with each of these. It's a knife that gets sharpened and sharpened and sharpened with each of these experiences. And a knife sharpening is not a beautiful thing. Like, it has this grating sound, it's like, there's this roughness when you're sharpening, but when you're kind of sharpening the blade, your life, through taking these events that seem hard, bad, sorrowful, and you just kind of keep on sharpening the blade, what happens is, I think it develops a sense of faith that you don't know until you've done this over and over and over again. Like the whole speaking, you're saying, you're having a voice there. This last month, this is the thing with my friend, is not the only. There have been lots of other instances where I'm like, yeah, that's not okay, or I don't, I'm not sure I like that when you do that, or, the kinds of things when I would normally just stuff all those things down. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. And it is sharpening the knife. It doesn't make, the first time was hard. The second time was hard. The third time gets easier, but it develops faith. So I think that's the benefit of
Oh, I
doing
think
it.
it's huge. And it helps you understand that there's always, is it an upside to the backside, a backside to the upside? There's always some unexpected, for lack of another way to put it, gain that you're going to get out of this experience if you relax into it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a key. If you fight against whatever is, then whatever bag of gold that the universe was trying to give you on the other side of the hill, because you won't let yourself roll down the hill, you never get the bag or pot of gold.
Right. Yeah. I have to say, one of the things on mine is this circle that I did, or a healing piece of work. And it wasn't actually healing work. It was just two people at work who weren't necessarily clicking together. They'd had so many years of experiences of hurt feelings and not addressing them that, it's like a marriage of some sort, where you've been in a marriage for a long time and you just one thing stockpiles over another, and then after a while there's like ill will that's built up. And I walked into the very first meeting, and this couple was talking about some of the things that they're upset about, and it was just like, after the first meeting, it felt like all hell had, like, it was like hell had broken loose. I was like, oh my God. I was actually almost feeling sick because there was just so much toxicity and anger that was being processed. And the person called me on the phone and she said, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I didn't know this is going to feel this bad. And I said, I know it does feel bad. There's just no going around it. It feels bad. And I can't guarantee it, but oftentimes you have to go through the pain, and then you'll come out on the other side, and you will be lighter and freer than you were before walking into this fiery pit of seemingly hell. And she's like, okay. I mean, like I had to hold the faith, and I couldn't even guarantee results, right? Because I can't, like you said, you have to hold firm the whole time. Meaning I can hold firm, but she has to be willing to march through the fire, right? The whole fire all the way through to the end. So it's been over the course of 2 months. And we had a meeting yesterday that I just felt like I was on some other plane of reality. It was just so exquisitely beautiful. These two people who walked in so hurt and angry and sad and misunderstood just walked away with a better understanding of each other and of themselves. And it was just, I mean, I was like floating on air for like 2 hours because it was just so beautiful to see, but it didn't start off beautiful. I mean, it looked like hell, and I wasn't sure. But if you stick through the process, something magical can happen, and
I
you allow
believe
yourself.
I believe we talked about it last week with trigger point therapy as the example. There's been a theme that keeps coming up and coming up again, which is leaning into it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I guess another step in radical acceptance is, all right, this is uncomfortable, this is icky, this is trudging through wetness in the basement. But if I simply lean into it, allow it to be and experience it. For instance, I could have closed the basement door.
Just like, whatever, deal
I
with
don't
it
see
later.
anything. I've got an interview to work on. And for a nanosecond, I said, I could grab the bike and go for a ride right now. I admit it. I thought about it, CJ.
I think every single one of us would want to get on the bike and ride away, not come back home to deal with that mess.
Instead, you lean into it, and
Yeah.
something comes through on the other side if you're willing to get your feet wet to
Yeah.
follow that forward.
Yeah. I mean, I had a breathing workshop where I don't know this. There are all sorts of different breathing things I've noticed that have come out, like Wim Hof and this other was just this breathing where you, you just sit there and breathe like that for 45 minutes, and you have supportive music and there's person doing Reiki and all this stuff, and it's kind of amazing, but it's. And in the even in that 45 minutes, there was a point in which it was that same process of like, oh my God, like this pain in my heart came out, and I was like,
Yep.
wow, it hurts. What the hell is this? Why was this opened? Oh my God, make it stop. Why am I here? Should I go home? But she had each of us raise our hand to make a commitment that we wouldn't leave. So I was like, I'm not going home. So I was just sitting or breathing. And then afterwards, like the insight came, the learning I got was wonderful. And, but you had to go through the pain. I mean, the same kind of thing.
There's a dear gentleman on Maui, a dear friend of ours. In fact, I want to reach back out to him, goes by the name Darshan. And he used to teach around the world for a good 28, 30 years, particularly up in Scandinavia, a laughing and or dancing exercise
Nice.
where you literally keep laughing, force laughter at first, and keep laughing and keep laughing and keep laughing until you basically pop.
Yeah.
You cry and the tears are flowing and the pains
Wow.
come up and all these emotions rush to the surface, burst forth. It's similar to a breathing
Wow. So it's a
exercise.
laughing though. So you laugh through your pain.
Bingo. Well,
Wow.
you laugh until it hurts, and then I guess the pain goes away. And it brought up powerful healing stuff for me when I did it. At first you're there laughing, and all of a sudden you're bawling uncontrollably and or unable to move. But then you
Wow.
keep on going with that laughter. You lean into that pain, and over 30, 40 minutes or more, you come out on the other side of it as well.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that's how I work with clients when I'm coaching because I was talking to someone and they're talking about their perfect relationship and how um, it's like a contract in some ways that they made with themselves about how to be in a perfect relationship. And they're like, I don't know why I can't necessarily find this guy that I'm interested in. And it's like, well, let's actually examine, like, what are the, like, you've put these rules around. I feel like there are these rules around what has to happen. She's like, well, I have to find a guy that I'm not necessarily attracted to, but has integrity. I have to be with them forever, and I can never break up with them regardless, and I'm never free. Something like that. And I was like,
So that was 4 red flags and 3 statements.
and I said, okay, so. And I said, so let me repeat back to me what you said. And so I repeated those 4 things, and I was like, so can you see why you're not getting into a relationship? Because in order to get in these relationships, these 4 things have to be, it's like your contract with being in a relationship. So can you see how that's not helpful? And we both started just bursting out laughing. She's like, oh my God, like I can. And I didn't, but it was just, I don't know, somehow I can't replicate it right now, but at the time it's just the humor of the ridiculousness of our minds, and just you drag it out into the light and you're like, can you see? This is not helpful. And it was great because the both of us were laughing so hard, and like laughing to the point of sometimes crying, because it's of that same kind of thing.
Well, Jessica used to do, she hasn't done it recently, which is very interesting. She used to kind of, particularly as I was healing from my injuries on Maui, she would lobster claw me right below my armpit.
Ow!
And it would hurt until I would basically cry with laughter. And it changes your whole emotional state.
Yeah.
There's definitely brain chemistry, there's hormones going on. Not sexual hormones, but meaning it's changing your chemistry of the whole body when you're in that kind of a lobster claw grip.
Well, I remember when I was taking a yoga training thing, and they said, why don't you lead the meditation? And it was like a really serious group. And I said, well, okay, I was just listening onto NPR about laughing therapy. And so they were suggesting that there's this yoga, laughter, no yoga, yes, or whatever. So I said, I don't know exactly what it does, but I was told that you start off by just going like, ho, 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 ho. So that's what happens if you get a whole group of people doing that. Like, inevitably, you will just be laughing your heads off in about 3 minutes. And it just changed the whole, I thought, like, that is the best way to start off a yoga class, because everyone was just tired. It was 7 o'clock on Friday, People were, I could just tell they're like this, and I felt the same way. So we did that laughter thing, and it changed the whole energy of the room.
All right, I'm muscle testing whether we're going to go here or not. It's Jessica's exercise that we do at the beginning. Typically at the beginning of every class. Last night, it was an accepting what is. We had it at the end of our awe class.
Okay.
It is drop and give me 10 woohoos.
Okay.
So everyone, you want to crank down your volume if you are a little bit woohoo averse. But this is a total state changer. But if you are in a place to do this, in particular where you can move your arms to the woohoo, then do this along with us, and you will experience a tremendous state change.
So you want people to do exactly the same thing that we're doing while watching this?
Yes.
Okay.
So I will lead, and I want everybody to follow along for 10 woohoos. Are you ready, CJ?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. A recommendation again, turn down your volume if you're a little woohoo averse. Here we go.
Woohoo! Woohoo! Stand up! Woo! 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 I feel like a bird. Woohoo! Woohoo!
Better than sucking helium.
I think I like my augmentation of the owl. I think that's a good one. I think You need to have people make their bird sounds. You can do something, a shamanic thing where they basically tune into their shamanic animal and make the shamanic bird.
Yeah.
Um, on that
Anything
note,
else you got, CJ? Because I'm good here.
I think I'm good.
Thank you, everyone. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler and
CJ
CJ Liu. Why
Liu.
am I saying CJ Liu?
Michael Sandler. And me,
The
CJ
Google has
Liu.
gone to the brain here. Saying, be well, have fun, try radical acceptance of whatever is, and drop and give us 10 woohoos. And shine bright.
Woo!
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.